practice amendment of the state Grosso.
Dziękuję bardzo, to się wstrzymam.
So, welcome back. I hope you were able to make the most of this first break to chat, to network, and maybe to quickly charge your batteries. We now move to a very exciting part of our program called the Oxford-style debate. There are three things you need if you want to be a simultaneous Now, this debate is exciting, first of all, because of the caliber of the two speakers who are connected remotely and will be taking part. Here you have them on the screen. You will see, to the one end, Gry Hasselbalch, who is an eminent scholar who promotes a humanistic approach to AI and data. She is known as someone who's not afraid to stand up to big tech and who emphasizes the side of human creativity when it comes to navigating the challenges posed by technology and AI. On the other side of the screen, you will see Jürgen Schmidhuber. We are very excited to have him here today because some have even called him one of the founding fathers of AI, particularly when it comes to deep learning. And I was fortunate enough to chat to him briefly as we prepared this conference, and I was struck by, at the same time, very acute observations and a very down-to-earth, easygoing style. Now, what is also exciting about this session, I find personally, is that it's called an Oxford-style debate, and maybe not all of you are familiar with this format. The way it works is we're going to have two speakers debate a motion from opposing points of view. They will each be able to first make their case for 8 minutes, and then, after these first two parts, they will each also have another 5 minutes for a rebuttal, in other words, to present counter-arguments, having heard what their opponent had to say initially. And what is also unique about this debate is that beside our star speakers, we get to measure what is happening in the audience and what the impact of their arguments is on you. So, first of all, the motion. You see it on the screen. It is as follows. This House believes that AI-powered interpretation will never replace human interpretation. Now, of course, so many of you already have spoken about this today, also on the podium. It's in everybody's minds. We know that. Now, what about you? What's your role? Well, we usually hate it when people take out their phones at conferences, they start chatting on WhatsApp, they get distracted. But now I want you to do this because I want you, using our friend Slido, to tell us what you think. Do you agree or do you disagree with this motion? We're going to give you some time now to reply, see what comes up on the screen. I have a suspicion of what might appear on the screen. And so far, it's an even battle. There might be a bit of a bias in the room. We accept that. So, active participation, we have close to 200 now who have replied already. But let's keep it going. My friends down here tell me, let's not stop the flow. Okay, so it would appear that there's a clear majority. It's not a spectacular majority. It's not a landslide, but still. Okay, so now that we've gotten the pulse of our audience, let's see what our speakers have to say. So during this first round, as I said, they each get 8 minutes, and they have been warned that they will have to have their timers handy and that we will be strict when it comes to timekeeping, just to be fair, not because we're in a rush in any way. And my friends over here will help me make sure that we're on the dot. And so now I'm going to start by giving the floor to Gry, who will be arguing in favor of the motion, as is the tradition of an Oxford-style debate, and then we'll hear Jürgen also for the first 8 minutes. Gry, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me for this. I think I'm going to start by being a little bit cheeky and say that I think that AI-powered interpretation should never replace human interpretation. I need to say this because right now I think there are some forces pushing for the automatic replacement of all kinds of human powers, our creativity, our critical faculties, our intuition, our empathy. I think these are all human traits that are somehow sort replaced with artificial machine imitations at the moment. And for all the wrong reasons, actually. Market dominance, profits, technological advancements. And so, of course, I think that it's really important that we push against that movement to basically safeguard what it means to be human. And so what I really want you to do now and think about is to reflect about this very delicate balance between humans and the machine technologies we are increasingly using to assist not only our human communication, but in so many other of our human relational activities today. And of course, this is based on the fact that I believe that our human potential, we have unique traits, we are unique, and then these unique traits, they have to be central when we interact, when we relate, when we communicate with other people. So the thing about human language, and I know that all interpreters knows that, is that it's an expression of the unique culture, the experience, and the society that it represents. And so ideally, what we think that we need to do with language, it's a way to communicate and connect distinct experiences through some kind of mutual understanding. But in history, we have been also developing technology to assist human communication with many different purposes. And I think that some have been more generally been developed to seek to create human bonds across cultural experiences, but others with less altruistic objectives. And so now, at the moment when we see this latest peak of language technology, AI and natural language processing and LLPs, like large language models, LLMs, and their chatbots like ChatGPT, and now the latest DeepSeek, I think that our human identity, the human identity of communication, it's actually transforming. And this, of course, raises several questions. First of all, we have to think about with what purpose these new language technologies they are introduced into our lives, or based on what ideas of human communication, and of course, whose interests do they serve? Now, again, as anyone in the room knows, words are very powerful. Any human interpreter knows this by experience. And so, as Wittgenstein, he said, the limits of my language are the limits of my world. And so, of course, we use words and language to justify specific ways of looking at the world, the nature of things. And even though language and words can seem very abstract, it really has real consequences. Real laws are passed based on specific uses of language. Real business decisions are made, and real people's lives are actually affected based on the specific uses of words and also the worlds they illustrate. So, of course, a very complex understanding of language, which goes beyond this kind of encoding and decoding of data, it's really crucial when it comes to interpretation. And so AI tools, they might have the intelligence in storage, memory, and processing of information, But what they don't have is the human wisdom. They don't have the understanding, the empathy, the intuition, the creativity, all these skills that are so important in these very delicate situations where you really need an acute understanding of the words. And again, as I said, the worlds that they illustrate. So how, for example, they represent and reinforce human relations, cultures, experiences, politics, and this very human complexity of language. So for a moment, think about the situations where the meaning of powerful words are interpreted now, and how important human understanding is in those contexts, where your work as interpreters are necessary. We have international diplomacy, interpreting in the UN and NATO and at global summits. We have legal settings where you assist non-native speakers, for example, in courtrooms, medical settings, when you help patients communicate with healthcare providers, business, especially in multinational companies, facilitating negotiations, community services, when you support refugees, immigrants, minority groups in assessing public services and welfare systems, and of course media, interpreting live events and interviews and things like that. For example, to give you an example, I was once at a very big global conference at a panel on freedom of expression, where blogging, blogging, was translated into blocking, blocking, by an automated system. And everyone knows, all of us humans, we understand the semantics of this, the political significance. We also care about this mistake. The point is, does a machine understand it? Does it even care about a mistake like that? Of course, not at all. So just to conclude, there is this ongoing battle between a culture of machines, I would say, and a culture of humanity that really needs an urgent attention. But I think that this fear of missing out of the global AI race, as it's called at the moment, it doesn't really allow for human contemplation, reflection. And this could be our demise if we don't take time to make these things right. So we really need to value and prioritize human culture from the early stage of development and deployment of AI language technologies, or I think our human powers will be reduced. Look at the communication between human beings. At the moment, it's already transforming. So think about your feeds in your social media posts and so on and so forth. It's changing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gry. That was very eloquent, I felt personally, but also thank you for staying well within your time limit. And without further ado, I will give now the floor over to Jürgen for his own version. Jürgen, over to you.
Thanks to Gry for this very thoughtful presentation. She argued that AI-supported interpretation will never replace human interpretation. I cannot believe that. Today's automatic translators are based on algorithmic methods from the previous millennium that my team published at Tech University in Munich in 1991. Back then, compute was about 10 million times more expensive than it is today, and there wasn't much you could do with our methods. Automatic translators at the time could do almost nothing. But since 1941, when the first general purpose computer was completed, compute has become 10 times cheaper every 5 years. 10 times cheaper every 5 years. In 2011, compute was already 10,000 times cheaper than in 1991, but the automatic translators still sucked. The Chinese laughed at the automatic translations from Google and other providers and at all those silly mistakes. But only 5 years later, in November 2016, they were no longer laughing because compute was now 100,000 times cheaper than in 1991, and that was enough. Google suddenly achieved a huge improvement in translation quality through our neural network called LSTM, or long short-term memory. Maybe some of you have heard of it, which is now the most cited AI of the 20th century, which makes me pretty happy. A year later, in 2017, everybody was doing it. In 2017, Facebook was using our LSTM to translate 4 billion messages every single day. The translations were still not perfect, many silly mistakes still, but they were now getting significantly better every single year. And today, a decade after the 2016 breakthrough, we have gained another factor of 100. And the translations today are already much better than those of 2016. They are certainly better than my own, and that's why I also used an AI to translate a draft of this text. Of course, AI interpreters are already superhuman in some respects, as they can translate for thousands of people simultaneously in dozens of different languages. No human can do that. But when it comes to translation quality, the best human interpreters are still better than the best AIs. But for how much longer? The aforementioned trend is not going to stop in the coming decades, because the known physical limits of computing are still a long way off. In the next 30 years, compute will again become 1,000,000 times cheaper than it is today. Everything that seems impressive to us today will seem trivial in retrospect. For this reason alone, no one can seriously believe that AI-supported interpretation will never replace human interpretation. So what about the most outstanding of all translations? My favorite example is The Catcher in the Rye by Nobel Prize winner J.D. Salinger, who translated it congenially into German. It was another winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, Heinrich Böll. One might now hope that such congenial translations are only possible for true people who really know through personal experience what it means to walk barefoot through a field and have all these profoundly human experiences that befall the protagonist of the story. But even in this area, human dominance is not assured. I suspect that the best machine translators of the near future will be those who are not just encoders and decoders of sentences, that not only have read all of the world's literature, those guys already exist today, but they also have experience in controlling complex humanoid agents that not only have cameras and microphones, but also millions upon millions of touch and pain sensors, and can act in the real world and in principle experience much of what biological beings and humans experience, that can interact with real humans and learn better to predict the behaviors of humans within their society. Now, such versatile robots do not yet exist today, but they are pretty close. At least simple variants of them have been around for a long time, and the prototypes are getting better and better as we speak. Artificial agents whose main purpose in life is to learn from experience, to avoid pain and maximize reward, just like humans. And when such agents combine their experience in the real world with the art of expressing themselves, like a typical Nobel Prize winner in literature, which can already be acquired today through diligent reading, it seems absurd. It seems absurd to assume that AI-supported high-quality interpretation will never replace human interpretation. Never is such a bold, presumptuous word. Just a few decades ago, many people believed that AI would never pass the Turing test, that AI would never play chess superhumanly well, that AI will never solve difficult math problems formulated in natural language, and so on. All of this proved to be a misconception. And now consider again that AI gets 1,000,000 times better per euro every 30 years. It seems inevitable. Soon, interpreting AIs will eclipse almost all human interpreters in every important way. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jürgen. That was pretty scary, I must say, your last sentence, but very well delivered. And I shall make a few comments maybe at the end, but I think now we'll stick to the format and I'll give another 5 minutes to Gry for her rebuttal. Over to you, Gry.
Thank you, and thank you, Jürgen, for this walk through the history of AI, which is amazing that we can do that as human beings in 8 minutes. I think that what your intervention made me think about was I was thinking also about literature. You mentioned Catcher in the Rye, I think, and I'm thinking about someone like Karen Blixen, a Danish author that moved to Africa at some point and wrote a lot of beautiful stories. And one of the characteristics about her language and how she became famous was actually because she insisted to translate all her work herself into English. And so she became famous for her very particular style that was expressing her identity as a kind of transnational personality that had been dealing with a lot of different languages, Swahili, Danish, English, her international identity, at a point when the global world was kind of expanding. I don't think when I listen to the advantages and the advance of technologies like large language models and general purpose AI, I don't think that models like that will ever reach a level of language at that point. And I'll tell you why. I think there's different understandings of how we approach the human identity and nature, and in basically in how the AI field has been approaching it, and how, for example, from my point of view, from the humanistic point of view. So if you take something like, for example, you were saying that some of these technologies will, become significantly better than humans in interpreting, but then we also have to think about what does it mean significantly better. We hear a lot about artificial general intelligence that will be significantly smarter than humans, but what does it mean? It means that you have a machine, or you have a big system that can process a lot of data. So if we look at, for example, the human intelligence as a machine similar to AI that can process data, then surely, yes, we will be a lot slower and we will not be able to compete with the machines. But if we go back to someone like Karen Blixen and her experience and her language, the way her language was put together through experience, personal experience, through history, through intuition, through her creativity, I think it's I have enough confidence in the human identity to think of it as something that is unique, that we cannot replicate. I mean, in general, in science, we know only an inch of the human brain. So the fact that we actually think that we can reproduce the human brain is quite stunning. So I think that it's a question of perspectives. There's things that AI can be incredible at and can support also interpretation, translational tasks. It can reach, have a huge outreach and can support maybe also, if it's built in the right way, communities that do not have access to interpretation tools and things like this. But there are things that I think it's all about the paradigm and the way we're thinking about things. If we think about AI as something that can replace either a human capacity or a human task completely, that's where I have a kind of an issue. Because I do think that it's the wrong way of understanding what it is that humanity actually excels at. It is something that we don't even ourselves inside have a good enough understanding of. So who are we to think that we can build a machine that can imitate those tasks? So again, as I said, it's more of a nuanced approach. I think, as I said before, I think that, and we might agree, me and Jürgen, on that there are machines and businesses and AI technologies that are built with the wrong kind of understanding of what it means to be human in mind and for the wrong purposes. But I do believe that there will be a purpose for AI technologies interpretation, but just not with that motion in mind that it is there to replace the human creativity and identity. Yeah, that's my rebuttal. Thank you.
Jürgen, over to you. 5 minutes.
Right, thank you. I love it that you mentioned Karen Blixen, and I remember her well because she looked a lot like Meryl Streep. You mentioned that she translated Danish into English and existed on doing that by her own to express her own identity. And this has a lot to do with what I mentioned before, with the coming interpreters that are not just about encoding and decoding sentences, what is still the standard for current translation systems, but which can connect the texts to all the experiences of AIs, of robots living in the real world, interacting with other humans, and learning to predict other humans and what these humans are going to do as a consequence of these actions. How are they going to behave in their society? If this human does that, what is this guy going to do? If this human says that, what is he going to do? And so on. So all of these experiences with the real world, that in the end will make the difference between the decoder-encoder systems and the real AIs that are able to think about what humans' intentions are and what humans' traditions are in their societies, and why somebody who grew up in Denmark is different from another guy who grew up in England maybe, and why it's therefore important to have a Danish touch to the English translation of a lady experiencing adventures in Africa and knowing what it means to be in Africa and understanding what animals do and what coffee planting is about and all of these things. But, all of this knowledge can be acquired by learning AIs. In principle, we have such AIs as we speak. We have AIs that, actively learn to generate their own experiments like little babies do, to figure out the consequences in the real world, like little physicists that try to predict what's going to happen if I do that, and then, get bored with those things that are predictable and get excited about stuff where they still can learn something. And that is all going to flow into these future superhuman translation systems. Now, one thing that I get from your rebuttal, I'm trying to summarize it as follows. Humans excel at being human. That is true. So if you want to truly reflect a human with all the flaws and everything, then the best way of approaching that is create a real human who does that. However, future super smart AIs and machines will be able to understand even those limitations and those special aspects of humans so well that, that you won't see any difference. Remember, every 30 years we gain another factor of 1 million. Every 60 years we gain a factor of 1 trillion. Given this enormous acceleration that is still ahead of us within a single lifetime, I think there is no chance in hell for human interpreters to keep up with really good artificial interpreters. Thank you.
Your face.
So, I have a few things I really say. First of all is that I don't know what AI-supported interpreters would think of you as speakers, but as an interpreter, I think you were brilliant for 2 reasons. You spoke naturally, and you stuck to the time allotted. So first of all, well done to both of you for that. And I think when I said the caliber of our speakers, I think you agree. We've heard about Wittgenstein. We've heard about semantics, which look at modal verbs. Is it about could? Is it about should? Should we ever use the word never when it comes to technology? We've heard about monumental writers such as Heinrich Böll translating Salinger and Karen Blixen trying to translate herself, and what that led to. It's been an incredible journey, thanks to both of you, well beyond, I think, the world of AI and interpretation, very philosophical. So please stay because, oh, Jürgen, are you raising your hand? Just a second, yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that Jürgen unfortunately had no time today, so he sent me his avatar.
Okay, excellent. Yes, and also I think with plenty of humor, both Gry and Jürgen, wonderful speakers, really. So now the time has come to see how they have impacted your view of things. We saw that there was a majority in favor of the motion. But let's do a second Slido now and see if you've been swayed in any way by what you've heard. Okay. Certainly closer than it was before. So let's see if Jürgen's somewhat scary version of the future has made some of you change your minds.
It's not a scary version. It's a brilliant version. And
It's a bit scary for our profession right now, let's say. Okay, so this is really neck to neck now. It's half and half, 50-50, with a very high number of participants, so it's a pretty representative sample we have. Huh? Okay, let's see if we can get to, well, we're getting to 300 already. When do I stop? When do I stop? Okay, shall we stop now? Let's just, by the skin of our teeth, our profession is safe for the time being. 51%, 49%. So I think that although Gry's position still came first in the end, I think that clearly Jürgen's arguments were very convincing indeed, and a lot of us had to reconsider our initial position. Now, having said that on a personal note, I would venture to say that if the day comes in which we are replaced by by artificial intelligence, interesting slip of the tongue, it's going to come in a very, very distant future. Yeah. And I'm going to think, what? But to be fair, Jürgen did not use up all of his time. So
No.
Jürgen, tell us.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. It will be a very, very distant future. It can still take months, if not years.
Okay. Gry, any quick last comments from you?
I really think it depends on how you understand humans and machines, and so I think actually it's a funny question, no? So you can't answer it in one way.
Okay.
It really depends on the point of departure. If you think that the machine is the same as the human being and can be the same, and that we can actually create something artificially that is as complex as you and me, then maybe yes.
Fair enough.
But
fair enough.
Of course, I would say no.
But either way, I would like to thank you both for this very engaging, heartfelt, yet cordial battle of words. And I would now like to thank the audience for a very active participation. I think you enjoyed this one particularly so far. And I would now like to hand over to Antoinette, who will be introducing the next session. Well done once again. Thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you.